What's going on, good people? This is Nikki, and I'm here on Voice and Value, where I'm voicing my valuable perspective in a non critical and unbiased way. Now, here I go again, minding my own business while all up in somebody else's. Today, I want to explore an aspect of human experience that we deal with daily, our behaviors. More specifically, today, I want to talk to you about patterns of behavior, why we repeat certain actions, how these patterns form, and what they mean for our lives. Understanding behavioral patterns can give us a deeper insight into ourselves and others, and even help us make better decisions in our personal and professional lives. The idea that doing the same thing over and over again while expecting different results is illogical. Let's just start there. Logic is about understanding cause and effect. In any given situation, if you perform a specific action, the cause, it leads to a specific outcome, the effect. Now, the relationship between the cause and the effect should follow predictable patterns. If you want a particular result, you need to understand the right conditions and actions that will produce that result. If you're doing the same thing over and over again but expecting different results, you're ignoring the cause and effect relationship. In other words, you're not even adjusting the actions to match the outcome you're hoping for. For example, let's just say you're trying to lose weight, okay, but you keep eating the same unhealthy foods every day and doing no exercise at all. If you expect to lose weight while maintaining these same habits, you're ignoring the cause and effect relationship that healthy eating and exercise have on weight loss. By not even changing your behaviors, you're setting yourself up for the same outcome. Let's say you're trying to solve a problem, okay, but you keep using the same ineffective method every time. If your method hasn't worked in the past, continuing to apply it is illogical. The expectation of a different outcome despite using the same approach is a form of mental inertia. It's failing to adapt or learn from the past experiences. Humans, just like machines, we're adaptable and capable of learning from experiences. When things don't go as planned, we gather feedback from the environment, which we can use that to modify our behavior and try different strategies. When we persist with the same approach despite negative results, we are disregarding one of the most important principles of learning and growth, and that's feedback. If the feedback tells you that the action you're taking isn't working, then continue to take the same action is illogical. Sometimes the expectation of different results, despite doing the same thing, comes from cognitive biases, especially confirmation bias and the status quo bias. In other words, people tend to feel more comfortable sticking to familiar routines, even when those routines aren't producing desired outcomes. There's a sense of security in the repetition, even if it's not serving you well. In a lot of cases, people expect different results because they subconsciously believe that eventually things will work out if they just keep on trying the same thing. Now, this can be linked to hope or optimism or fear of change. However, expecting a different outcome without changing the method is not logical, folks. Okay? It's a psychological defense mechanism that allows us to avoid confronting the possibility that we might need to actually change our approach. If you want different results, you have to introduce a new input, a change in your behavior, attitude, or approach. Think of it like this. Think about trying to grow a plant, for example. If the plant isn't thriving, you might need to just adjust the watering schedule, the light exposure, or even change the soil. If you keep doing the same thing, the plant won't change because the system, which is the plant's environment, it hasn't been adjusted. If the current method of behavior isn't leading to the desired outcome, repeating it will only yield the same result. In order to create change, we need to adapt, to learn from our past experiences and adjust actions to align with our goals. This concept isn't just about common sense, it's about recognizing patterns and having the flexibility to adjust them for a greater effectiveness. In order to see things different, we must change the way we approach things. Let's start with the basics. What exactly are patterns of behavior? A pattern of behavior is essentially a recurrent sequence of actions or reactions that we exhibit in particular situations. These behaviors often feel automatic or habitual, and they can arise in response to certain triggers, whether those triggers are external, like, maybe a stressful situation at work, or internal, such as feeling anxious or excited. For example, think about someone who, when feeling stressed, they just automatically reach for a snack or cigarette. Or someone who, when they're faced with a challenging task, they procrastinate by distracting themselves with social media. These are examples of behavioral patterns, repeated actions that are often influenced by our emotions, past experiences, or even our biological makeup. Now that we know what patterns of behavior are, let's talk about how they formed. Behavioral patterns, they form through a process of reinforcement and repetition. To break this down, let's consider the initial action. The first time that we engage in a behavior is typical in response to a specific situation. It could be an instinctual response or something we learn through experience. Like a child might cry when they're hungry, okay? It's perfectly normal, and that's a natural reaction. But then there's reinforcement. After the initial action, there's usually a response. If the behavior leads to a positive outcome or relief, like the child getting fed, then that action has just been reinforced. This reinforcement can be positive, like getting rewarded, or negative if you choose to avoid something unpleasant. Over time, though, the behavior becomes more ingrained because the result of the action feels good or it just alleviates the discomfort. But let's not forget habit forming. As the behavior is repeated and reinforced, it becomes a habit. And once that habit is formed, it becomes part of our automatic response system. Think about brushing your teeth every morning. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's just part of your daily routine. Similarly, stress related behaviors like overeating and snapping at others can become automatic even though they don't always serve us well. So, this is why it can be so difficult to break a pattern of behavior. Our brains actually like repetition because it conserves energy. Once a behavior is learned, our brains see it as being efficient, and we're less likely to make changes without intentional effort. Patterns of behavior are influenced by a variety of factors, but two key ones are environment and genetics. So, as far as environment is concerned, our surroundings, our family, culture, societal expectations, they all play a huge role in shaping the patterns we adopt. For example, if you grew up in a household where communication was passive aggressive a lot, and you may be more likely to develop similar communication patterns in your relationships. On the other hand, if you grew up in an environment where direct communication was valued, you might develop a habit of addressing issues head on. Our environment also affects the kinds of rewards and punishments that we encounter. For example, if you're in an office culture where late nights are rewarded with promotions, you might develop a pattern of overworking, even if it's detrimental to your health. While environment is crucial, we also carry certain tendencies from our biology or genetics. For instance, some people are more predisposed to anxiety or depression, which can influence their behavioral patterns. There have been studies that have shown that genetics can affect things like impulse control or risk taking and how we respond to stress. So, while our environment shapes us, our genetic makeup also has a significant impact on how we form and respond to certain behavioral patterns. If mom and them been cursing and screaming to get their point across, it's likely you're also loud and you lack good communication skills. If we recognize that we have negative or unproductive patterns of behavior, how can we change them? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Changing a behavior pattern is challenging, but it's absolutely possible. The first step to get there is awareness. You need to identify the behavior that you want to change and understand its triggers. For example, do you tend to procrastinate when you feel overwhelmed, or do you overeat when you feel stressed? Once you're aware of the pattern, the next step is to introduce a new behavior, ideally one that gives you the same result but in a healthier, more productive way. This can be difficult because your brain is already wired for the old behavior, but over time, if the new behavior is reinforced by rewarding yourself or noticing positive outcomes, it can begin to replace those old patterns. One effective method for changing behavior is called habit stacking. This involves attaching a new desired behavior to an already established habit. For example, if you brush your teeth in the morning, you might add 5-minute meditation session to it. Over time, this will become part of your new daily routine. Another technique is mindfulness. So just being present and aware of your thoughts and feelings in the moment. By practicing mindfulness, you'll become more attuned to your automatic reactions, which gives you that power to consciously choose a different response. It's also important to note that not all behavior patterns are negative. In fact, many of the most successful people in the world owe their achievement to positive behavioral patterns. So when we develop positive behavioral patterns, they can lead to greater emotional resilience, better relationships, and even improved physical health. They're not just good for us individually, they can also have a ripple effect on the people around us. So let me leave you with this. Patterns of behavior are an essential part of just being human. They can serve us well, helping us navigate the world with efficiency, but they can also become limiting if we're not careful. By understanding how these patterns form and how they can be changed, we can unlock the potential to improve ourselves and ultimately our lives. Whether it's breaking a negative pattern or reinforcing a positive one, the key to all of this is self-awareness and being intentional. So remember, you have the power to shape your behavior, and through that, you have the power to also shape your life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.